This is episode 23 with Smiley Poswolsky.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 23 today. And today I am super excited to be speaking to today's guest. It's none other than Smiley Poswolsky. Now, when I started the Quarter Life Comeback, I came across Smiley's work and I've been trying to get him on for some time now. But he's been really busy with relaunching his new book, which we speak about in the interview. And if you don't know Smiley, Smiley is a speaker and author of The Quarter Life Breakthrough, a book he wrote to document what he was going through in his late 20s and help others navigate the same situation. Now, Smiley was working in an awesome job and making good money with all the benefits and stuff that you would want. But despite all this, he had this feeling that things didn't quite feel right. He wanted to write and create community, and he wasn't seeming to get that done. Now, after finding people who believed in his dreams, Smiley made the move, and he now shares his knowledge as an expert on millennials and the career market as a speaker and author. He describes his work as being for people who were told, "That's not possible, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're too young or too old, you don't have the money or the connections, it's too late," and took a deep breath, listened to their heart, and went out and did it anyway. Now, this episode did go on a little longer than usual, so I split it into two parts so as not to take up too much of your time. And in this part of the interview, we cover how to deal with FOMO when everyone on Facebook seems to be doing cool stuff, how to use social media in a healthier way, why we are not the me generation, what is meaningful work and how to find it, and how to make your own unique impact. As usual, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/023. But for now, let's go hang out with Smiley. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest in the building. We have Adam Smiley Poswolsky. Smiley, how's it going? Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
So good to be here. So good to be here. I'm all about the quarter life comeback, quarter life breakthrough, quarter life comeback, making your quarter life all it's supposed to be and more. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And it's funny because when I was coming up with a name for this podcast, quarter life breakthrough was one of the options that I considered. And then I just kind of like the sort of alliteration of quarter life comeback. So I stuck with that. But when I interviewed Zephan, I can't remember, I think it was episode 12 now. He said, you've got to speak to this guy, Smiley. He's like perfectly aligned with your message and your listeners and your podcast. And I checked out your TED Talk, which we'll link to and discuss later on. But I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. And now we're here. So I actually said to Smiley before this interview, my power went out right before. So I'm sitting in the dark, but I wasn't going to delay this any longer. So we're here. The things you don't see. Smiley, I was wondering if you could fill people in on your quarter life journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. And, for me, it's been a journey to say the least. So I'm 33 right now. And I had my quarter life crisis, kind of late. Some people hit it right after they graduate college at the age of 21 or 22, some people at 25. And for me, it was at around the age of 28. So during that time, I was living in Washington, D.C., working for the federal government. And I had on paper a great job. So, I was making, $70,000, had healthcare, had benefits, job security. You literally can't get fired from working for the federal government. Trust me, at least in the United States, there are a lot of people that should get fired and don't. So you have this great job security, you have good benefits, your salary goes up every year, and people were impressed when I told them my job, when I went to happy hour and tell people, oh, what do you do? I'm the special assistant to the director of global operations at the Peace Corps. And people were so impressed. My boss was impressed, my parents, and everything was great except for the fact that I knew it wasn't the right fit. And, it's really hard when you have a job especially when it's a job that actually is a great job, right? Peace Corps is a great organization. Working for the federal government is stable. It pays well. It's meaningful work, right? We talk about meaningful work. It's purpose-driven work. It just wasn't right for me. It wasn't purposeful for me. And you tell people and they kind of are like, oh, you know, suck it up, or you should be lucky you have a job. So many people don't have a job, or my friend would kill for that job. And you feel guilty, right? You feel guilty for kind of wanting something different, for knowing that you're not in the right place and not exactly knowing what to do next. And this is how kind of my life went for about, you know, over a year really, of this kind of, well, I should just make the best of it, suck it up. You know, just, this is a great job. This is what it is. And then kind of this voice inside my head that's like, you know, this isn't right. You know, you want to start writing more. You want to be more creative. You want to start surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs and really go after something big. And, you know, I wasn't that young. I was 28, which is pretty young. But, you know, I kind of felt like, hey, like, this is the time in my life where if I got to go do something, I got to leave a legacy. I got to make something happen. I don't want to just have 10 years go by just so that I, you know, stay safe and get this paycheck. I really want to make something of my career. And it was tough because I really felt stuck, you know, and you start comparing yourself to your friends on Facebook and you get a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out. And you're like, oh, this person's going to India. This person started a business. This person's working for this awesome, you know, cool startup. This person just, you know, wrote a screenplay for a movie, all these things. And you're freaking out. And for me, this period was intense. And it was actually when I started really writing, and I started a blog just to kind of process what I was going through. And I think this is a great way to start a writing project or a podcast project or any storytelling project when you're kind of going through a period of turmoil or inner conflict and stress, because that's when the best stuff comes out, you know? So I just started kind of writing about my experience, this sense that I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was, and kind of documented, you know, my quarter life crisis on a blog, and started to realize that a lot of people were also going through a similar thing. And that there weren't that many resources out there to help people to kind of think about these things. And it was around this time that I went to a program called Starting Block Institute for Social Innovation, which is an institute that brings together young people from all over the world for a 5-day institute all around using business for good, becoming a change maker, becoming a kind of conscious leader. Artists go, entrepreneurs, writers, business people running nonprofits, people working at big companies, and all kind of just young people that want to do something with their lives and people who care. And this is when I started to realize, okay, I got to make a leap. Right. This isn't, you know, I knew I needed to make a leap, but that's when I kind of, you know, said to my accountability buddy, hey, like, I'm going to quit my job. And they're like, good, when? Yeah. You know, and that's when I made the commitment. And, you know, not long after that program, I needed to save up some money. But once I did, I left the program. I left the government. I left DC. I bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco. Without an exact plan, but with quite a few intentions, with the intention to start writing and do more freelance writing and to surround myself with other young people going after their dreams. And, you know, as they say, the rest is history. And, you know, that's kind of the turning of the quarter life crisis into a positive, which is why I like to call it the quarter life breakthrough, because, you know, we have all these negative images coming at us, right? We know there's a job crisis, the recession. You know, the average American is graduating with $30,000 of student loan debt. We know things are rough. Anyone that goes on Facebook like knows that the world is a rough place right now. This is not news. The question that becomes more important, I think, is how do you actually do something about it? Yeah. Right? How do you turn that into, as you call it, a comeback, a breakthrough, you know, a positive, a moment of opportunity where you actually discover who you are, what you care about, how you want to spend your days, who you want to serve, the people you want to help, the types of people you want to surround yourself with. So that was the beginning of my breakthrough. And it's been about a 4-year journey in which I did a lot of writing and self-published a book called The Quarter Life Breakthrough. that now is actually being published, which is coming out this October. So very exciting kind of in terms of, just going after it and listening to that voice within. And sometimes you just got to go for it,
Yeah. And I definitely want to get into the book in the meat of this interview a little later on. But I'm so glad you mentioned starting some sort of writing project, because I actually said to a client right before this, I think everyone should start some sort of blog or journal to get out those things that are in their head. And I've noticed the same thing starting this podcast. I mean, I just thought a lot of people, I speak to my friends that are going through similar stuff. So I thought I'd document it and get on people to help people going through that. And I've been overwhelmed at the response, and just the extent to which people are going through this stuff. So it's really cool having you and some of the other amazing guests on that we've had. And you mentioned, Facebook and FOMO and all that kind of stuff. It's really bad how we see, social media, we only see the good things.
Right.
And I think you mentioned that in one of your articles about life coaches too.
Sure.
But I think FOMO is probably one of the biggest things that our generation suffers from. So for people listening, how do we get over that fear of missing out and comparing ourselves to others who are living seemingly better lives or cooler lives than we are?
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize that, as you said, people are sharing their highlight reels, right? And, it's really easy to think that everyone has it figured out. The truth is that everyone's just as clueless and just as, much trying to figure it out as you are, and that the grass is always greener, right? So, I give the example in my talk about how, I was super jealous of my friend who's a corporate lawyer who had this amazing job, was making well over six figures. He's killing it, right? And he's already getting married and, proposing at sunset in front of Machu Picchu on Instagram. Like, this guy's got it all figured out. And, I reach out to him, a year later or whatever, when I was doing the book, and I was like, hey, what's your secret? And he told me that he was miserable, right? He was miserable in his job. I mean, he was very happily married. He loved his wife, which is great, but he was miserable in his job, and he was going to go back to grad school at the age of 30 to become a high school social studies teacher, which is awesome for him. But the lesson there is that, the grass is always greener. Stop comparing yourself to others. Start figuring out what you actually want. Why are you here? Not your friends on Facebook, not your boss, not your parents, not your sister, your brother. Why are you here? What do you care about? And sometimes that involves, I recommend people taking a social media sabbatical, taking a week off, or if you're really going through a period of kind of crisis and feeling like you're really stuck, maybe if it's even 2 weeks or a month. And I know that sounds really intense, like, oh my God, I can't go off Facebook for a month, but yes, you can. And I guarantee you, especially if you're a creative or an artist or a business person, you'll get a lot more done, and you may even have a pretty incredible breakthrough. You may write, the beginning part of a book, or start a podcast, or, launch a new website, because you suddenly have all this time and clarity and focus. Because I don't think social media is evil. I think there's a time and a place for it. I mean, one of the reasons my book became a thing is because I ran a crowdfunding campaign to self-publish the book. I raised money, $13,000 from 500 people in 40 different countries to fund the book, to pay for an editor, to pay for the cover designer, to be able to ship the book all over the world. And that's amazing. And I use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, social media to spread the message. What an incredible tool we have with social media to get the word out or build a movement, right? But it's got to be, there's a balance there, right? There's a time and a place when social media can be really useful, but when you're freaking out about what to do with your life, it's not the best time for it. And I think it can be overwhelming. So in addition to, not comparing yourself to others and to start figuring out what you want, is this idea that, instead of thinking, instead of competing with everyone on social media, you can start to think about collaborating with other people, right? So it's very easy to see people that are doing similar things as you and get jealous and be like, oh, who's doing it better, right? So I can see someone let's use the example. I'm writing a book called The Quarter Life Breakthrough. I can see your podcast and be like, oh, this guy Brian's doing the quarter life comeback. Like, who's doing it better? Like I'm jealous, or, whatever. Like, he's better, I'm better, that kind of thing. Or we can say, hey, how can we work together? Right? How can I help you reach a larger audience? How can you help me reach a larger audience? So you think of it as a form of collaboration. Or you see someone starting a nonprofit, and instead of feeling really bad for yourself, you're like, I wonder if my friend Anna, who's starting the nonprofit, knows about my friend John, because John has access to a lot of fundraising expertise, or to these grants that she could get to help her build her nonprofit. So you think about it in terms of collaboration, so that when you go on social media, you're not always, sitting there depressed, being like, everyone has it figured out and I'm a loser.
Yeah.
That's just a really, lame way of thinking.
Yeah. I love this. It's so funny you mentioned this now, because a similar thing came up for me, this weekend, and my girlfriend helped me get back on track. And I said to her once I'd calmed down from my little rant, that, it's crazy to think that because we see one other person doing, and I wasn't talking about you, by the way.
And it's okay if you were.
Yeah. But we see one other person doing the thing that we thought was our breakthrough idea, pardon the pun, and then we kind of get all upset, like, oh, they've done it already. But there are 7 billion people on the planet. Like, one person,
exactly.
It doesn't matter what idea it is, one person can't serve all those people. So yeah, I love that idea. And I mean, I'm going to share your TED Talk and your book and your website in these show notes. So yeah, which is a small example, but yeah, I mean,
I think, let's say if you're doing a podcast about the quarter life, the point is you're going to find other people that care deeply about the quarter life. And this idea that we all work in isolation and that we're all kind of competing is a really base. It's a really kind of base way of thinking. I don't think you get very far in any line of business if you're not collaborating with people that share similar passions and interests. I think that's, even with the book, I've noticed with when you're trying to get a book deal, a publisher is always curious, what are the other books that are similar? They actually want to know that you thought about the other books, to not say yours is better, but they want you to show that there's similar books related to similar audiences that have sold, so that it's proof of concept. So in many ways, it's hard to get a book deal without showing the people that are actually doing very similar work as you. Yeah. So the point being, it's all about building alliances, not, thinking, oh, you're the first one or you're the only one. I mean, if you try to do it like that, when I set out to write this book, I mean, there's dozens of books that are career advice books for 20 somethings, right? If I let that stop me, I would be nowhere. But I said, well, there's no one has told my story or knows my friends, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like, there's that saying that if you're one in a million, there's 7,000 other people like you. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool as well. And in your talk, Smiley, which again we'll link in the show notes, you mentioned that we are not the me generation, and that success for us is finding meaningful work, not climbing the corporate ladder or earning the fattest paycheck. So I was wondering if you could shed some light on how we actually go about finding more meaningful work.
Sure. Great question. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of, you look in the news, and when people are talking about millennials or 20 somethings, they say, oh, they're the entitled generation, the me generation, the selfie generation. They just care about themselves, and I kind of point to a lot of the data, which shows otherwise, right? So 50% of millennials would take a pay cut to find work that matches their values. So they turn down money to find work they actually care about. They don't want no money. Obviously, we all need money, but more importantly, they want meaning, right? 90% of millennials want to use their skills for good. 75% of millennials think the business world is getting it wrong, that the businesses are too focused on their own agenda and not focused enough on improving society. So this is a generation that I believe really wants to work with purpose, wants to use their access, their skills, their privilege to empower those less fortunate. To start businesses that are actually doing good, to give back. And so then the question becomes, cool, so what is actually meaningful work and how do you find it? And, when you're talking about something like meaning, it's like fulfillment or happiness. There's no one scientific way to say, hey, that's meaningful, that's not meaningful, right? But the framework I kind of come up with for the book is really about asking the right questions, much more so than the right answers. And the framework I use is that meaningful work provides personal meaning, reflecting who you are and what your interests are, allows you to share your gifts to help others, provides a community of believers that will support your dreams, and is financially viable given your desired lifestyle. So there's a few pieces there. It reflects your interests. It allows you to share your gifts to help others. It provides a community of believers, and it's financially viable for you. So I think that breaking it down in this way really helps people start to think about those parts and to see, kind of to fill them in, right? So you first would ask, what are your interests? What do you really care about? What makes you you? What are the things you're most passionate about? What excites you? What social issues, infuriate you? What gets you fired up? What types of articles do you find yourself posting on Facebook? What books do you read? And then you'd start to think about, what are you really good at? What are your skills? What are your strengths? What do you really want to be good at? If you're not good at coding yet, but you really want to be a programmer, and then, you start to think about impact. What's the impact you want to have? There's so many different ways to have an impact, right? You can have an impact by, running a bakery and making delicious muffins and croissants every morning and making people's day by giving them something to start their day with that's delicious, right? That's a great impact. Yeah. You can have an impact by writing books or doing a podcast or starting a business or working for a big business or helping someone get their business started. What types of people do you want to serve? Do you want to have an impact in your own community, in your neighborhood, in India, in Africa, in your city, in your college? What's the impact you want to have? And then to start to think about, community. So what are the types of people you want to surround yourself with? What kind of coworkers do you want? Do you want to have coworkers? Do you want to work for yourself? And then, the important piece that I do think a lot of young people overlook is that the financially viable piece, right? So we're talking about meaningful work, not taking a meaningful vacation, right? This is work. It has to pay you. That's why it's called a job. But then, I think a lot of people don't ask, okay, how much money do I actually need? Your friend might need a lot more money for their life than you do, right? So how much money do you need to cover your rent and your expenses? And then quality of life, do you want to be able to do yoga or exercise during the day? When I had my job in DC, I was making good money, but I was running every night at 9 or 10 p.m. because that's when I got home from work. And that was pretty brutal, right? I didn't really have time to cook dinner with my friends. And that's important to me. Yeah. If you make a lot of money but never have time to see your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your kids, I don't think that's a very recipe for a happy life, Yeah.
And it sounds like this is a perfect exercise for taking that digital detox, maybe just with a journal and getting clear on those questions.
Yeah. And, I have an exercise in the book I call, filling out your alignment Venn diagram. And it kind of has these overlapping circles of gifts, impact, community, and quality of life. And you can see, where the overlap is and where you belong. And the cool thing about that is if you fill it out now and then filled it out in 6 months or a year, you'd kind of shift, right? Because we're always changing. This doesn't mean you quit your job every 6 months, but it does mean, what was meaningful for you 1 year is probably different than in 2 years, right? Let's say you travel or you meet someone or you read a new book or, something comes up for you that you're really excited about. So we have to be kind of aware of these, how our definition of meaning shifts as we grow older.
There you have it, guys. That wraps up episode 23 of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast, part 1 of our interview with Smiley Poswolsky. And if you like this one, make sure you listen in for part 2, where we cover why you shouldn't follow your passion, the problem with the current career model, as well as the steps in Smiley's book to create your quarter life breakthrough or quarter life comeback. If you like this one, make sure you share it over with your friends and drop me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know your biggest takeaways. And for me, me, I think the biggest thing that I'll remember from this one is how to define meaningful work for each of us and then go and find it ourselves. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned at briantier.com/023, and make sure you sign up at quarterlifecomeback.com to get these interviews as soon as they go live. Until next week, guys, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.